spirituality, the teachers will always tell you this is universal to all beings, right? But if you look around in the class, these are not normal, ordinary people. No, these are people that feel a passion or feel very drawn to that type of study. But it occurred to me that it's the approach in the language. The approach in the language seems to be favoring an orthodox way of study. And my argument, and it still is here, is that if it's universal, it should be languageable and transmittable to anybody, anywhere. Thank you. And when I was considering what to teach today, what to share today, it occurred to me that it should be since this is a yoga retreat, that it should be something that's specifically associated with yoga. And to the surprise and horror of most yoga people, yoga evolved out of a spiritual philosophy, right? Asanas didn't come out of nowhere. They came from a spiritual philosophy. It's the oldest recorded spiritual philosophy as a system in India, apart from Advaita Vedanta, apart from Vedic studies. It's called Samkhya. Samkhya was the philosophy of Kapila. And then, of course, when Patanjali was putting together his Yoga Sutras, he nicked it all. He just adopted it and borrowed it and fit it to yoga. Or he fit yoga to Samkhya. But it is the spiritual foundation of all of yoga. And I thought it might be fun to kind of discuss that to some degree. In Vedanta, we call Samkhya the first step of the two steps to the not two. Meaning, Samkhya takes everything it takes a look at everything in a very logical way. The word Samkhya literally is linguistically related to mathematics. So it means something like, and you can't really translate it into English, but it means something like logical inquiry or discriminative inquiry. It's a method of looking at things. Okay, so what are we looking at? Well, what does yoga mean? Anybody want to give me a try with this one? Yes?
Joining, the yoking together.
Yeah, yoking together. Okay, perfect, exactly. That's exactly what it means. What are the two things we're yoking together? You have to have more than one to put something together, right?
The body and the spirit, or the body and the mind, or all three. Right?
It's the common answer, actually. And I think that the answer is common because most people don't really look into the spiritual underpinnings of yoga. Samkhya is very, very clear on what it's yoking together, right? It divides everything into two very broad general categories, and a third one. The two categories, and this is in the Yoga Sutras as well. Does anybody want to venture a guess on these two categories? Yours was close, not exact, in a way, perfect. No, come on, Kadia.
Individual spirit with everything else.
Yeah, that's it. In English, it's correct. In Sanskrit, we would say Purusha and Prakriti, right? Purusha and Prakriti mean, Purusha means spirit. Now, we can think of spirit as the vast, the universal, impersonal spirit, but in Samkhya it means specifically the animating spirit within each of us, the individualized animating spirit. We would call that, you could call that or think of that as witness consciousness. That thing that knows you are, right? That's aware of everything else, okay? And then the other one, of course, is nature. So spirit and nature. So the idea is what qualifies these two? And why would we want to put these two together? How do they fit together? And what's the purpose? Okay, that's what we'll talk about a little bit today. So before we begin, we'll just a little reminder of what we're here for. I'll say it in Sanskrit and then we'll shift to English. goes like this. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That means lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness into light, lead us from death to immortality. Peace at the personal level, peace at the conventional level, and peace as there is peace at the absolute level. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. That's what that means. That's the aim. That's what yoga is for, right? Yoga is to resolve or to reunite or to discover that we've never been divided in the first place. That's even more important. Okay. So what Samkhya does is it gives a model. It's almost an image, a diagram. It's almost a picture that you put in your mind that you can superimpose over literally the entire universe, and everything fits in its place. So I thought it would be kind of good to walk through that model and see if you can understand it, you know, and then we'll discuss why it's important and how it's going to help us and how it fits in with yoga. Yeah. Well, the model, like I said, it begins by this division. And it says, okay, rather than start with spirit, let's look at nature. So let's give some other words for this, because it's important not to get bound by the definitions, okay, by the words. So nature and spirit is one way to look at it. Purusha and Prakriti. People who've done yoga for a long time, actually, these words are pounded into your memory, right? But we can also think of it as matter and consciousness. Matter being Prakriti and consciousness being Purusha. We can think of it as a dear friend, a monk, friend of mine. He says it's the not self and the true self. The true self being spirit, the not self being everything that's not spirit, right? I like that one, but it veers away from the definition just a little bit. So let's divide these two things. And we'll start with nature. And what is nature? Keep in mind that the Indian models for things are over 6,500 years old. So they can be quaint sometimes. But it doesn't mean they're wrong. We would just use a different language today, a different dividing system today, a different model today. But the model stays the same. Okay, so let's look at that. The idea is that there is a primordial cause. And this primordial cause appears to have three different aspects to it. It's really the same thing, but it's just expressing in three different ways. So if I say to you life involves birth, existence, and death, right? Those are three things. We can't deny that birth and death are different. Somebody dying and somebody being born is not the same thing. But we also can't deny that it's all part of one life, right? One life stream. Like that, in nature, we see that there's three types of energy that are always playing with each other to find some sort of energetic equilibrium. It's like a balancing act. It's like a rock, paper, scissors act, where sometimes rock is winning, sometimes paper is winning, and sometimes scissors is winning, right? And we call these the three gunas. It means the three characteristics. That's all guna means. It means an attribute or a characteristic, something that that seems to be there, right? And those three energies are, you know, a negative or dark energy. We can just think of them that way. The other is a positive or growth or vibrant energy. And then the other one is a perfectly harmonious and balanced energy, right? Those are the three energies. And each of those energies is completely interdependent on the other two. There's no way to divide them. And none of those energies can exist in its pure form. In other words, the positive energy will always have aspects of the negative and the harmonious within it. And the same for the other two energies, right? They give birth to each other. They're reliant on each other. They cannot be separated from each other, right? Much the same way that a magnet has obviously a negative and a positive pole, but it also has a harmonious current that takes into consideration both of those. You can't divide one from the other because it's part of the same thing. And that from that cause, that there is an intelligence that's manifest in nature which we as humans can just dimly perceive. Why? Because our mind is limited. It has limitations, right? Our bodies have limitations, our mind has limitations. There's no question about that. My mind is limited. I simply do not do mathematics the way, say, Stephen Hawking does. Many of us don't. There are limitations there. Let's get that right out of the way. So because of these limitations, there's this, it's difficult to clearly see, but there is a tremendous, magnificent intelligence that's manifested every iteration of nature. Scientists, the deeper they look, the closer they look, they say it's magnificent how intelligent this all is. The way that a chemist will look at how molecules form, or the way a physicist will look at the forces interplaying in the universe, and they're mesmerized by it, the perfection, beauty of it, right? And they would say that that intelligence is at every single level. Okay, so from this nature, this in its vastest, most inclusive sense, this intelligence, we get a bit of that intelligence to us, and we call that intellect. So from nature, we derive intellect. This intelligent functioning that's here within each one of us, to some degree or another, it's there. And because that intelligence is there, naturally, from the intellect, we get a sense of self, a sense of identity, a sense of ego. Okay, I think, intelligence, therefore I am, I exist, ego, right? Ego in Latin simply means I. It's not the Freudian, Jungian ego as self-image, Facebook ego, you know, the ego's ego. It doesn't mean that. It just means the sense of I. Here I am, I exist. Can't deny it. You can argue it. Maybe I don't exist. But something has to be there in order to even make the argument, right? So this is the I sense, right? And because we have intelligence, and because we exist, we have the potential. We have the potential to, and this is the next step down. So nature, intellect, ego, and potential. Potential to do what? To experience. Potential to do what else? To act, to behave. And what are we doing when we act and behave? We are creative. We are creating. We are creating our reality, even if it's a shitty one. You know, we're creating our world. We're creating our concepts. We are creating. And from that creating, which is an outward flow, we also have the possibility of experiencing an inward flow. So, in the quaint model of Samkhya, you need stuff to create with, both at a gross or a subtle level. You need stuff, and they call that the 5 elements. And you need something to experience the stuff made out of the other stuff. And so that's the senses, the 5 senses. So the 5 elements and the 5 senses are put together in this thing called potentiality, right? So there's the potentiality. These are causal. From that, we create our world. From that, we create our existence. We create our identity. You know, we express, we manifest. And that leads to, okay, well, we need to process all of this somehow. We need to process the biodata. So the mind is there. Now, the mind isn't the same as the intellect. The intellect is the understanding, reasoning aspect of the mind. The mind itself, there's different words for these in Sanskrit, but in English there isn't, so try to follow along. The mind itself is a questioning thing. It's there to analyze the data and interpret it in binary, good or bad. I like it, I don't like it. It's safe, it's not safe. This sucks, I really dig this, right? That's pretty much how it does it. Why does it do it that way, in binary? Because it's the fastest way to come to a decision, right? This is a problem-solving tool. The problem to solve is survival of the species. Individually first, the collective later. To solve the problems, immediate ones right now, the bigger ones later. But that's what the mind does. And in order to do that, the mind has its 5 senses. It's 5, we call them organs of action and organs of knowledge. Organs of knowledge, the 5 senses. Our 5 senses tell us what's going on around us. The organs of action are, in a quaint way, they will say the hands, the feet, the mouth, the generative organ, and the organ of elimination, right? But what it really means is that we have the power to manipulate hands. We have the power of locomotion. We can move legs, right? We have the power of communication, the mouth. We have the power of regeneration. We can recreate our species. You know, we can make new people. So that's regeneration. And we can get rid of toxins. We can get rid of the bad things in us, both at subtle levels and physical levels, right? So these are the five, what they call the five organs of action. So we've got our organs of action, we've got our senses, and we've got the five elements. The five elements in the classical sense are described as sky or space, air. Fire is always in the middle. So sky and space are above. Father sky, upper. Fire is right in the middle. And then we got water and earth down below. Okay, that's the quaint model from the Vedic times. The Greeks had it, the Egyptians had it, everybody has this model. But what we would understand that today is the phases of nature that we see. And those phases or states of matter are earth, solid, water, liquid, fire, plasma, air, gas, and space, waveform, right? Waveform. I want to say Bose-Einstein condensates, but I think waveform is going to work better, right? Part of matter is waves, in other words. Microwaves, the signal on your telephone, right? We don't see it, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It's a wave. Electromagnetic waves, radio waves, these are waveforms. Okay. So they have this nice model. And if you count it all up, it comes to 24 principles, 24 aspects, if you're using this model. Now, it's not important to use this model. You can say, whatever the body-mind organism is organized. It's an organization of a bunch of stuff, right? So that's part of nature, right? All of nature that we can experience is nature. A good way to understand what is meant by nature is that nature and matter are synonymous, right? When Einstein says E equals mc squared, he's giving you three things: energy, matter, and forces or light, synonymously, right? And he's saying that everything in the universe is these three things, and these three things are one thing expressing in different ways. So we've got these three things. Well, let's look at it a little deeper. Just say, if you don't want to say it out loud, say it in your mind, but just follow me on this. Matter, meter, mother. These three things are linguistically related. You know? Measure and meter, they mean the same thing. They're linguistically related. So anything that is experienced and experienceable, not necessarily perceivable. Anybody here ever see wind?
We all feel it.
Yes, we can't deny it. We feel it.
Perceive it in some way.
We see the effects of it,
Yeah.
don't we? There's no question about it. But nobody's seen wind. But does that mean wind doesn't exist? No, not at all. Wind is like truth. We can see the effects of it, but we don't see it itself, right? Have you ever seen your mobile phone signal? No, but we're damn sure it exists, aren't we? So nature has this manifest form that we can perceive with our senses, we can understand with our mind, but it also has an unmanifest form, meaning it's in such a way that the human senses can't see it, can't perceive it. But we know of it. Not only do we know of it, we can measure it, we can capture it, we can manipulate it, we can work with it, even though it's beyond human perception, right? Now, how magnificent is that? And that's the same way with the energies around us and so forth. So, nature, by Samkhya's definition and by yoga's definition, is anything experienced or experienceable, anything that can be measured or metered, anything that is of the Mother Earth. right? Mother Nature, that's Prakriti. That's nature. Now, let's look at this. If you're aware of something, it's an object of awareness. Means it's classified as nature, isn't it? So, are our bodies nature? Yes, of course. Fantastic works of nature. Is the energetic systemic functioning and processes that keeps our body alive nature? Yes, we're aware of it. I'm aware of my processes. I'm aware of my functioning, my energies, right? Okay, what about my emotions that I feel? Are those parts of nature? Has anyone seen an emotion? No. We can see an emotional outburst. We can see the effects of emotions, can't we? They're clearly obvious. But it's part of nature. It's part of nature. It can be measured. You know, I'm feeling shitty today. I'm feeling really double crappy today. Okay, I've just measured it. I've given a quantitative or qualitative measurement, right? Okay, what about intellect then? If the mind feels these emotions and we're aware of the mind, and the mind is an object of our awareness, right? It's part of nature. Then our intellect likewise must be the same, right? So the intellect that thinks these thoughts, it reasons things out, it attempts to understand everything at every level. It forms opinions, sometimes incorrectly, and holds on to them, sometimes incorrectly. But intellect is there. We all have it to some degree or another. There's no way to deny it. And that's what thinks thoughts. But that intellect, we're aware of our own intellect. We're aware of our own opinions. We're aware of our own ideas, aren't we? We can measure them. We measure it. Well, that's a bad idea. Okay, that's a great idea. That's a measurement. We've just measured it. We can manipulate. We can work with these things. They're parts of nature. Intellect too is a part of nature. Okay, now here's the big one. Our deep subconscious conditioning. That too is part of nature. No doubt about it. We're aware of it. We know it's there. We may not be able to control it directly, right? It may seem to be in control of us often, but it's there and we can't deny it. You know, our psychological conditioning is there. Our programming is there. And it's individual, right? If I value something in one way and you value something in a different way, something is informing the value. Something is informing that. That's individual. So let's take a big world example. Life is suffering. Okay, Buddhists might say that. Existence is suffering. Right? One of the three marks of existence, suffering. Existence is suffering. But another person, a tantrika, will say, life is a joy. It's a dance, you know. Why not dance to its tune, right? Okay, something's informing the two different perspectives. So we're not talking about truth. We're talking about conditioned perspective. Perspective and truth are different things, right? So in this analysis, and what I'm trying to describe right here, is really the simple fact that anything experienced or experienceable, anything that can be measured, is matter. Waveforms are matter. Things we can't see but can experience are matter. Matter. Matter and spirit are different, right? We confuse this. Let's look at the word confuse. Con means together, to put together, and fuse means to melt two or more things into one homogeneous whole, right? Meaning we have not differentiated. We have not reasoned it out to say this is actually one thing and this is another. What Samkhya does is say divide it. We'll put it back together later, but right now divide it. Break it apart. You know, you can say yes, everything's spirit. Okay, share with me your logic. Because if you can't do that, you're copying and pasting some sort of philosophical idiom, right? Let's break it down and really understand it. So matter is anything experienceable. Spirit, in the Samkhya model, there's 24 different categories. that include everything in the universe into those 24 categories. But the 25th category, the last one, only one of the categories, is that which is aware of it all. That's which sees it all. Okay. So now we've got it down to a seer and what is seen. Okay. So the question then is, which one are you? You see your body. You see your energy, your power, your passion, your ambition. You see your questioning mind, your reasoning intellect. You see your psychological conditioning, right? You see all of that. And it ranges anywhere from I'm damaged, there's something seriously wrong with me, I've got issues and baggage, right on up to everybody loves me, I'm so great. Everybody loves me, aren't I great? Let me just share myself with the whole world, you know. Yeah, but is that you? Or are you that which is aware of that? You see?
Can't we be both? We can at times I think we can move between both. We can be the seer, observing what's going on,
sure.
and we can be the ones experiencing what we're observing.
Okay, tell me the difference between the two. It's very simple. One is temporary.
Yes.
And it's relative.
It's seer is temporary.
The seen is temporary. The
Yeah.
body, your body is seen, right?
Yeah, the scene is temporary.
The seen is temporary. Your body is always changing.
Yes.
Your energetic qualities, right? Some days you're just lazy and some you just can't be bothered, and some days you feel like you're king of the world, queen of the world. Okay, that's changing. It's impermanent. It's related to circumstances and situations and other things. So it requires something else for its own existence. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the least stable thing about us. But look at the seer. The you that was aware of being you when you were a baby, the you that was aware of you being you when you were a child or a teenager or a really annoying young adult or an overconfident middle-aged person or a defeated middle-aged person. That thing that sees you has watched your development, all the comings and goings, that wanted to be a princess or a cowboy, really, when they were a kid, and later on wants to be a computer programmer. That thing that saw that has always been there. Does that have any change in it? No, the only change in it is what it's experiencing. But it's ever present. If we look at it to see if it has any qualities or characteristics, in other words, can it be measured? Can it be experienced or seen? This is an important question. Maybe you'll say, well, yes, of course it can. Then I say, okay, well then who's the seer in this case? And can that seer be seen? You say, well, let me try. Yeah, I can. Okay, then I say, who then is the seer of that? In other words, you get an infinite regress because the witness can never be objectified. As soon as you take the subject and you objectify it, it's like a reflection in a mirror. Okay, it looks just like the self, but it's just a reflection. You've borrowed the image. It's borrowed consciousness. It's a reflection. It's reflected consciousness. But what makes that even possible is you. Consciousness, spirit, Purusha, self, true self, right? So, sorry to say that your new amazing stretchy pants that everybody thinks is so great, or the best, yoga mat, your purple Om t-shirt, or the perfect incense for this particular yoga set, none of that's spiritual. Okay, lovely, it's an expression of life, but it's not spiritual. Spiritual is something different. It's not matter, right? Spirit and matter are antitheses, for now. The question then is, well, what is all this that we can experience? What's it there for? What does it do for us, right? It's got to have some purpose. Is it just to have fun? Just to get a tickle? Is it really just to go through all the crap that I've gone through in my life and try to sort that out? Is that, I don't get it. What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life, right? Well, look at what we're doing all the time, naturally. Every living organism on the planet is drawn towards pleasure and wants to avoid pain. There's this pleasure-pain principle. Yeah, pain avoidance, drawn towards pleasure. Well, what that says to us is that there must be something about enjoying. There must be something about feeling good that's desired by every living being. So it's the moving away from suffering, right? Suffering. In yoga comes from Indian spirituality. The notion of suffering is called dukkha. Now, dukkha is, it's good to understand where this word comes from. Its opposite, sukha, means happiness or enjoyment. Dukkha means something else. Dukkha is translated as suffering, but let's look at where the word comes from. Okay? The word dukkha is a mechanics jargon, where in Vedic times they had these mechanics that would make the carts and the chariots. And when they were making a wheel, and the wheel didn't fit onto the axle, they would say dukkha. Now, sort of in the way our mechanic would say shit, right? It's an expression of frustration. But what it really means is that if we use this wheel with this cart, it's going to be an uncomfortable ride, right? The ride is going to feel rough. It's going to feel uncomfortable. So that's what dukkha means. Quite literally, very literally, it doesn't mean suffering the way that we understand it in the West. It means the ride doesn't feel smooth. It's not comfortable. Something's wrong here, right? And sukha means a smooth ride. It's opposite. Who among us hasn't had that feeling that just something just doesn't seem to be working right? You know, this is not a comfortable ride I'm having. That's the dukkha, that's the suffering that we're all trying to move away from. And that smooth ride, that good feeling, I don't need to be rich or famous or anything like that. I just want everything to go smoothly, right? That's the feeling that we're drawn towards. And yoga is a tool for that aim. It's a dual aim. If we understand who and what we are, we diminish that suffering. Because all of that frustration comes from false identification. Me thinking that I'm poor little me. I am my psychology, my baggage. I am my history. You know, this is what made me. I'm this way just because I'm English, mate. You know, it's a hell of a victim mentality, right? We need to look into that. And when we do look into that, we find that we're not anything that we thought we were, right? If you said just a little game you can play with yourself. I am, fill in the blank. Anything that you put in that blank is an object of your awareness. It's an object of your imagination. It's an object of your experience. In other words, whatever you would put in there, you're not that. Right? If you say, you can do it another way. I am aware of. Anything that can go into that blank there is certainly not what you are. I'm aware of my mind. I'm aware of my body-mind organism. I'm aware of the glorious manifestation of the universe. Yeah. No, that's an object. You're the subject. You're the witness consciousness of that. You're the Purusha. Right? And just this can change everything. It can change the whole dynamic of how we feel about ourselves in the world. I mean, we really are only asking questions about three things, ultimately, eventually. We're asking about who am I, or us, we, if you want to think of it that way. What is all that? Which means the universe, the world, everything that you experience. And there seems to be a great mystery behind all this that's very hard to fathom. We can call it God, or the mystery of existence, or mystery of life, or whatever. But we're asking those three questions almost all the time. We do it as a culture and a society. The who or what am I is philosophy and psychology and psychiatry, right? The what is all of this that I experience? What's the world? What's the universe? The science, scientific inquiry. What about that mystery of life? Or is there God? There's religion, mysticism, right? So we're always asking about these three things, but they're really the same thing. So the thing that's the most intimate to us is us. So Samkhya, this is why Patanjali chose it for yoga, is because it's an inquiry to me, to this body-mind organism. And if I can wrap my head around that, everything else will make sense. And so this model of Samkhya that focuses on the energetic, self-balancing source of everything, then nature as a whole, the intelligence of nature in us, and we realize that the intelligence, the intellect, the mind, the ego, everything that we create and do, everything that we experience inward, we are part of nature. That is part of nature. But is the witness consciousness part of nature? No. It can't be, because you can't measure it. You can't objectify it. You can't attribute any qualities to it, because in order to do that, you would need to objectify it first. So, what is the purpose or the meaning of life? Go back to the question now. If we're drawn towards pleasure and avoiding pain, what gives us pleasure? Well, one thing that does is that we learn. We're learning stuff from the moment we're born to the moment that we shed this body. We're learning. We learn how to speak. We learn how to go to the bathroom. We learn how to tie our shoes. We learn how to do our jobs. We learn yoga. We learn philosophy. We're learning all the time. There's no such thing as going backwards, not even going sideways. Everything is a movement forward. Okay? Maybe you have to learn what not to do, right? That can feel like you've taken a few steps back, right? No, that's helping you to progress. So the answer is that this is like a school, because we're learning all the time, whether we want to or not, whether we acknowledge that or not, doesn't matter. We're always learning, and we're always enjoying. It's a school and it's a playground. Playgrounds go with schools, schools go with playgrounds. Even universities have track and field and football pitches and so forth. That seems to be what this is about. So the notion of where does my pleasure come from? It starts in self-improvement. I'm going to empower myself. I'm going to improve myself. I'm going to, and in yoga, I'm going to make sure that this rental vehicle that I have for perhaps 80 years or so is in good running order. I'm gonna make it work at its peak. Okay, maybe I don't have the innate potential that somebody else does, but I'm gonna shine it up. I'm gonna tune it up, right? And we do that. Why do we do that? So that we don't have conflict with it. Conflict with our bodies, conflict with our breath, with our energy, with our health, right? That's part of the whole process. So all of the physical stuff that we do in yoga, the intellectual or mental practices and concepts that we do in Vedanta, let's say, these are all ways of improving the body-mind organism so that it realizes the power that it has. It's self-empowered, right? In Indian language, we call that Veda and Vedanta. Veda means self-empowerment or self-actualization, right? To be the best you, ego, individual that you can be. And when that reaches a certain ripeness, a maturity, a certain, I'm established in this, I feel like I can do anything. I'm the master of my destiny. Okay. That will naturally segue into a movement towards self-realization, not self-actualization, self-realization. Because the self that actualizes is the individual, it's the ego. But the true self, that's the not self. The true self, the eternal, infinite, immortal self, is who and what you really are. Whether you understand it or you don't does not matter. Whether you get it or you don't makes no difference. You are that pure spirit. So, by using Samkhya, by reconnecting to the spiritual foundation that underpins yoga, it adds a kind of dimension to our practice and our understanding of ourselves, the world, of the mystery of life, that it's not going to fall out of the sky and land in your lap. It's worth reflecting on, concentrating on, contemplating on, right? Yeah. And that's part of yoga. Yoga came from this. Yoga developed as the physical yoga, asanas and so forth, developed as a way of making sure that there's no conflict, inner or outer conflict with the body, so that we could start to look at other higher questions. Sadly, I think that modern yoga, as it's expanding exponentially around the world, is becoming increasingly divided or divorced from its spiritual foundation.
It's lost it. It's
Yeah.
lost it.
Yeah. And it's a shame, because it's absolutely wonderful. Of all the benefits that you get by a physical practice of yoga, as soon as you start into this type of inquiry, it just adds dimensions to it. You know, it benefits you in so many ways, and those ways might not feel comfortable, because you'll come into conflict with a bunch of opinions, a bunch of false identifications, a bunch of egoic thought constructs, and so forth. You know, but it's worth looking into, I think. Yeah. So let's do just a very, very quick practice, and this practice is it comes from the Taittiriya Upanishad, but it is a practice that's been absorbed into yoga early on in yoga's history, and you'll recognize it by the name, perhaps. It's called Panchakosha Viveka. We did it just a moment ago without you even realizing it, but we'll do it in a little more concentrated way right now. So as a meditation, a reflective meditation. So make sure that you're, look, you can do it in Shavasana if you want. Don't fall asleep, or die. Or you can do it as a seated meditation. I'd like to do this eyes closed. Just listen to my voice and see if you can just follow it. First, get yourself really comfortable. Once the body's nice and comfortable, just observe your breathing and let it happen naturally. Don't try to control it. This isn't pratyahara. Pranayama. Just let your breathing relax to the point that you can't even hear it in your inner ear. No stiffness or tension in the body. And then just try to listen to the rain for just a few minutes without any inner dialogue, without any words. Now direct your attention to your body. Even though you're relaxed, you can feel it. Your body aware. You're listening. You can feel the temperature on your skin, under your clothes. You can feel the floor underneath you. And just acknowledge that you're aware of your body. This This is number one. I have a body, I'm aware of it. I'm experiencing my body right now. My body is an object of awareness. Number two, do you feel lazy? Do you feel energized? Do you feel at peace? Do you feel like you have to go to the bathroom? Do you feel healthy or sleepy? Right? Just be aware of your energetic state right now. This energetic state, too, is an object of our awareness. Number three, how do you feel? Has this trip for you been delightful? Has it been challenging? Has it been emotional? Has it been a curiosity for you? Did you enjoy yourself? We have these feelings. And when you take your emotions and your feelings and figuratively you put them on the table and have a look at them, we can create a little bit of space between the emotions and feelings and ourselves. We're aware of our emotions, our feelings. Likewise, they too are an object of our awareness. Just notice that, acknowledge that. Number four, just look at your, contemplate. Just notice your education, your understanding. Are you a specialist in your field? Have you learned new things recently? How has your knowledge, your understanding informed how you feel about yourself? Do you feel good about your knowledge? Are you very opinionated? Are you educated? Do you wish you had more education? Are you creative? And if so, are you actually the creator, or is creation flowing through you? And we go one step further. That's number four. Let's go to five. Notice that your entire life experience seems to hold some purpose. It has a meaning for you. The fact that you're still here, still alive, and you haven't committed suicide means that you enjoy living more than not. Look into that enjoyment. People living in terrible conditions still find moments to laugh, to love, to connect, to enjoy. And you notice that all living things are drawn towards that enjoyment, to that pleasure. And what a marvel, what a miracle to be able to be alive and to experience. See see all the changes we've seen in our lives, all the potentiality, good stuff and bad, the boring stuff. It's all there. We're experiencing it. How magnificent is that? Now notice that all of the stuff that I just said is always changing. It's impermanent. It's reliant on other circumstances and conditions. All these experiences, they're generated, they operate for a while, they dissolve back into nature. Every experience is like that. Creation, preservation, destruction, and we experience it all. Now I want you to direct your attention to the awareness itself, to that power that makes experiencing possible. That weirdness that is allowing the body to be alive and functioning right now. Consciousness. And know that everything that we're experiencing is in service of redirecting our sense of I, who or what am I, to this awareness. Just for a moment, just try to keep your attention on that awareness principle, that consciousness principle, witness consciousness. If your eyes are closed, just slowly open your eyes. Simple, guided, reflective meditation. You know, there's different ways of meditating. This is a Vedantic style meditation. It's a guided meditation, a reflective meditation. Instead of trying to subdue the mind or control it, we're trying to direct its attention in such a way that it tunes out everything else except what we're reflecting on. Yeah. Now, the Indians have a lovely model. They look at nature and they say that nature, this primordial cause, has three aspects. A creative aspect that's dynamic, it's beautiful, a destructive aspect, and a harmonious aspect. And that creative dynamic aspect they give a name to called Brahma. The preserving aspect they call Vishnu, and then the destruction and so that there can be renewal is called Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. And we have this as well in the West, right? The Latins got a hold of this notion. And they thought of it in terms of generation, that which brings something about. Operation, you know, how it operates. And dissolution. Everything that comes into being must also go out of being eventually, ultimately, right? It's one of the laws of thermodynamics. So, generation is G, operation is O, dissolution is D, God. But this God is nature. You see? In Indian spirituality, we would say that that is an expression of God. Where the Greeks said this is God, nature. But there's also the Godhead, where God comes from, right? We see it in Indian spirituality as spirit and nature, Purusha and Prakriti and yoga, okay? In other traditions, it's Shiva and Shakti, right? That's the term for it. In Vedanta, it's Brahman and Maya or Lila, the absolute principle and its expression as an appearance that's never as it seems, or the play of divinity, the play of consciousness. Yoga without this is like a body without its animating, life-giving principle. To just do yoga with the physical aspects is natural, it's understandable, but it's limiting yoga to something that it was never intended to be limited by, limited to. Yeah. Yoga, where it comes from originally, it was just naturally assumed. Two things. Number one, that you weren't running away from anything, that you have self-actualized, that you were a living expression of a successful life, living successfully, happily, harmoniously. And then going to spirituality. That was one of the understandings. And the other aspect of the understanding is that the physical practice is one thing, but the spiritual practice is another. And they have, how can they be separate? In other words, if you're pure spirit, has the universe or the world or experiencing any of it ever been divided or separate from you? Can we say they're two different things? Can we say that fire and heat are divided? I'll take the fire, but I don't want the heat, please. Right? I'll take the clay pot, but I don't want the pot part of it. You see? And so, I don't know her name, but as she said, they're non-dual, meaning it's undivided. It doesn't necessarily mean they're the same thing, right? The mind does this. We can't say that a wave is the same as the ocean. We've seen waves different from the ocean, but we can say that every wave is water, and the ocean is water. The essence is the same. So the notion will shift a little bit now from Samkhya to Vedanta, from one perspective to a higher perspective, where in yoga and Samkhya, it goes no further. This thing that animates you, the individual, this body, is pure spirit, right? Stop right there, go no further. If you can understand that, great, stay there. Wonderful. But those of you who are a little bit more curious and a little bit more intellectual will eventually ask the question, that spirit that animates me, and it animates you and him and her, and that tree, and every other thing, are those different spirits? Or is it one spirit expressing and manifesting as any other possible thing? Well, that's a very, very big philosophical question. We're not going to answer that today. But it's worth looking into. Okay. That's all I really have to say about that. I hope it helps you with understand your yoga practice a little better. We can do some question and answers. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer to the best I can. No. Okay.
It's like you're coming from another dimension.
Baby. Yeah.
It's really good to tickle the mind.
Yeah. Well, to inspire, in aspire, in Latin.
Inspire.
It means to breathe in, the spirit in, within. Or enthusiasm, to be enthused, and theos, the divinity within. Okay, I'll close this with a chant that is just a reminder. These invocations are just to remind ourselves of something a little bit beyond what we're ordinarily thinking, right? And this one goes like this. Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnamudachite Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishite Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It means, in English, I'm going to say it in English and then I'm going to ask, my favorite way to hear this chant is my cello over there. Sylvia, she does it beautifully. It means that we're discussing, this higher thing that we're thinking about, is absolutely perfect, pure and fulfilled. This too, the thing thinking about it, me, you, is also an expression of that. Therefore, it too is perfect, pure and fulfilled. This is an expression of that. When we can see that perfection that's found everywhere in nature, if we can see that within ourselves, then only that fullness and pureness, perfection and beauty remains. Yeah. Okay, Sylvia, you're on.
So you'd like to put me on the spot, huh?
Yes, I do. But it's lovely, huh? Thank you.
Purnamada Purnamida Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevam Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, Eric.
Thanks for coming.
Sylvia.
Food for thought. But it's true, Eric. I mean, the yoga for me, yoga without the spiritual connection, it's not yoga.
No.
And that seems to be about 80% of the yoga that is offered in the Western world.
Sadly, unfortunately, yeah.
Very simple.
One of my friends, I went to India about 6 years ago. I got an apartment up in the Himalayas 5 years ago, this year. Yeah. And it was as Mickey said. Does anyone here know Tracy? No. Okay.
Just kind of. That's
Right. It was another yoga teacher in the same lineage, the same parampara, the same lineage and tradition that Mickey comes from, that he's in. And she said, I was very adamant. I said, this can't be talked about. You can't intellectualize this. And she said, oh, sure you can. And I was adamant. I was like, no, you cannot. And she said, go to India, exactly. And I'm very picky about who I study with, and I look for the best schools, specifically those where the swamis, the teachers there, were considered living saints. And I studied with 3 different organizations, and none of them had a sexual or financial scandal in living memory.
Oh.
And so I thought,
Tick.
yeah, this is it, I'm there. And I went there and I was just blown away by the depth of knowledge and understanding. I mean, these swamis, we think that these people are runaways from society. Well, you're not helping the world out. You're going to run and sit in a cave. No. My favorite teacher, his name is Swami Tattva Vidananda, Swami TV. He had a Vedic upbringing, education, He ran away from home, went to university and got a PhD in biochemical engineering. He opened up a laboratory. Oh, they also gave him a PhD in religious studies, by the way, because he was fluent in Sanskrit and he was very switched on. He became a multimillionaire in India. He had a research lab, got married, had children, did what successful people do. And he speaks 7 languages. He won India's highest award for intellectual pursuits. I forget the name of it, but apparently it's a big deal in a country of 1.5 million people. They don't give this out very often. And there was, when I stood in front of him, there was nothing I could do to outdo this guy. I couldn't out-worldly him. I couldn't out-finance him. I couldn't out-think him or speak him. I was humbled. And I can tell you that what I learned from these great teachers is quite simply that the greatest joy is to understand something. How amazing do we feel when we learn something? Look at children, when they learn something new and they get pretty good at it. Look at the joy that just comes out, right? So don't limit yourself. Learn this stuff. And to watch these, I would be sitting in the lecture hall and there would be my teacher and 200 people. A third of them were other orange-robed, fully ordained monks. The other third were all of us, resident students in, white robes. And then the other third would be, walk-ins, just people coming in to listen to the lecture. I'm sure each of us was getting something different from the same message. But I found it magnificent at the level of understanding all of this that these teachers had. And I've seen this expression in modern day where, oh, I don't need a teacher, or I just learned it from YouTube or whatever. I'll tell you, maybe, yes, and the truth is that each and every one of us has this knowledge within us, right? But sometimes someone special can tease that out of us. They can inspire us. They can encourage us to find it within ourselves, because we do have it. Every one of us has all the answers. Yeah. Any comments? No questions, but comments.
I think it's wonderful to aspire, and so I've spoken to your turn.
No, I was just going to ask, so should we all go to the Himalayas?
No, it's not necessary. In fact, you're all probably doing exactly what you should be doing, which is what moves you, we act upon that. If there's any conflict with that, then look into it. Like if you're saying, I really want to go to the Himalayas, but I have this reason why I can't, and maybe I shouldn't, and that should be looked into. If you feel like going to the Himalayas, you really want to go to the Himalayas, but you can't, there's a conflict. Look into the conflict. If you don't feel like going to the Himalayas, but you think, you've been convinced maybe I should, but you know what, I really don't feel like it. That's an inner conflict. Look into that, But really, we're all on our own program. We're all on our own path, right? And that has to unfold naturally. You can't just force the flower to bloom, One thing that we're taught straight away, in the first month we're there, is you do not preach, proselytize, or convert. That is an act of violence. You must let everybody come to their own spiritual unfoldment. Only if someone asks, right? The fact that Mickey says that I'm giving a talk here, any of you could say, I'm not interested, and stay in your room, right? But the fact that you came here means there's something there, and so I can speak to that. But I would never go out and preach this to anybody, that's rude. I wouldn't go out and say, the Indian spirituality has very, very clear conceptual models, and I like it the best, and you should too. No, that's a bit pushy, And if you have your own spiritual practice, your own models, things that you follow, you must follow that. If that's what resonates with you, then by all means, But I can tell you this, and I really mean it. It doesn't matter what tradition, in what society or culture, at what time in history, it's all leading us to the same thing. And that's truth. And there can't be more than one kind. If it's true here but not there, that's not truth, right? If it's true now, but it wasn't back then, that's not true. Yeah. And what that means is, not only is yoga a spiritual journey of unfoldment, but so is life, right? And when we see it that way, it becomes beautiful. It becomes lovely. It's not a collection of successes so that we can impress everybody and win friends and get influence. No. It's all a movement towards the highest knowledge, the highest understanding, and all the experiences that come with that.
I have a question about the term witness consciousness.
Yeah? Ooh, that's a big one. There's no real way to define it, because the second that I define it, I've objectified it. You see, I've turned it into an object of knowledge. The only thing I can say is this: consciousness is how we know things exist. It's how we recognize intelligence. It's how we're able to feel and process love and happiness. Consciousness is you, but it's the fulfillment and the happiness and the identity that you truly are. It's what makes everything possible. In other words, remember we talked about intelligence in nature, and the intellect in the human becomes ego, right? It becomes a sense of I. But something enlivens that I. Something makes this lump of flesh possible. If it's not there, we have a corpse. We can see, I don't know if you've ever seen anybody pass before or not, but it's a very strange feeling, because somebody's there, you're holding their hand, you're saying goodbye, you're doing all of that, and all of a sudden they're gone. But what's gone? Everything is there that was there before is still there, right? Yes, okay, whatever left, does it have any form, characteristic, gender? We don't know, you can't. So that is consciousness. Now, you can expand that. You can say that everything that's experienced and experienceable, the universe itself, is only known to you. You can say, what about all these other people, Eric? Okay, how do you know those other people? They're objects in your awareness, in your consciousness. There's no way around that. And nobody can experience what you are experiencing.
Everyone's having their own different experience.
Well, the assumption is that there's everybody else is anything other than a dream, right? In other words, we assume that all of this is real without ever questioning it. When you're dreaming and you're having a dream, and your dreams can be powerful, right? For example, you can dream and be sexually aroused in a dream and wake up and act on that. You can dream that you've had a fight with somebody and wake up and still be angry at the person who's just laying there sleeping innocently, right? This is possible. Yeah. Meaning that in the dream itself, every character, every aspect, and sometimes they're very detailed, is your mind alone, right? It's within you. And it's the same thing. How is this any different? I am an object within your awareness. They are objects within your awareness. The whole universe as you understand it. The universe as you don't understand it. The universe that you may think Stephen Hawking or Albert Einstein understands is still within your awareness. Your consciousness is what makes you, ego, I, have the potential to experience anything, to do anything, to create anything. And if it's not there, there's a corpse. Yeah. But to try and explain it further beyond existence intelligence, love. It's difficult to do that. Yeah. The argument today is, does the body and the mind organism generate consciousness by its functioning and interacting? Or the alternate is the body-mind organism a transceiver, meaning it receives consciousness and transmits it? That consciousness is universal, but as soon as it's passing through this instrument, this body-mind instrument, it becomes personal, individual. And when we let that body-mind instrument go, it becomes impersonal and universal again, right? So the question is consciousness like the mobile phone signal that allows us to receive and transmit, right? We can speak into our phone, we can listen through our phone. We're receiving, we're transmitting. I can break the phone. Does that mean the signal's there? It's gone? No, it doesn't. The idea that a TV signal would be generated because you plug the TV in and it starts functioning seems strange now if we think about it as adults. And it's the same thing. So science says we generate consciousness. It's an epiphenomenon. Whereas spirituality says, no, you haven't looked at this in the right way. By just changing the way we look at it, we can understand it in a deeper way. Now, we can't give a concrete answer. Well, that annoys the crap out of a scientist, doesn't it? But who and what, consciousness is not a problem to be solved. It's not. It's a wonderful mystery to be enjoyed. And that's what we're doing by being alive. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Eric, can you remind me what the third word was? It was pure, perfect, and
Full, complete. Yeah. Fulfillment. The words that she sang, Purna. Purnamida, Purnamidam, Purnat. Purna means absolute fulfillment, complete, the whole, perfectly pure, beautiful to the nth degree, but it means fulfillment. And I'll just leave with this thought. We spend a lot of our life looking for happiness, looking for identity in community or whatever, and looking for fulfillment. We want to feel complete and whole and full, right? Not broken. You will never find those outside of yourself. The type of identity, fulfillment, and happiness that comes from the outside, it can be enjoyable, it can be wonderful, but it's not going to hang out. That's temporary because it's based on conditions. True identity is only found within. True happiness, you don't find it. Nothing makes you happy. Happiness is your true nature, right? It's your true nature. It's like a diamond that gets dropped in the mud. You don't see it. You're not experiencing the beauty of the diamond, its luster and its shine and its carats. Wash off the muck that's hiding that, and you'll find that it's still there, right? Yeah, we are happiness itself. We are an expression of that perfect fulfillment. The fulfillment is our nature. Happiness is our nature. That is the I that we're looking for. But we look for it out there, right? It's the joke is, I've run around the world, many different countries, looking for my butt. But it wasn't until I sat down that I found it, right? I'm looking for my sunglasses that are on my head. You are what you're looking for. What you're looking for is where you're looking from, in other words. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you.